So I have this map hanging on my wall. Multiple times a day when I walk up or down the stairs, I look at it, and I almost always notice something new to me. Though the map doesn't look too old, quite a few things are already outdated. For example, just look at the flag of Bosnia or notice that Sudan is still not split. That's somehow such a weird thing about the world map, to me at least. It feels static and constant, but it's changing all the time. This is a copy of a European map that I guess it's about 100 years old. Just notice the shape of Germany. Or, well, the existence of the Soviet Union. Or Poland, which was a lot more east back then, with parts of what's modern day Ukraine and Belarus. Apart from where the countries are, it features other important information, such as where steamboats lines are. When I saw this map, I couldn't help myself immediately compare it to modern day borders, and try to figure out when it was from. By the way, that's what this video will be about today. Trying to figure out when maps are from. So, clearly it's after the First World War, with no Austro-Hungarian Empire, an independent Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and so on. More precisely, it must be after the Treaty of Versailles, which was signed in June 1919 and settled the post-war borders. On the other hand, the map is clearly from before the Second World War, but we can do a bit better. Saarland, though small, is drawn as its own entity, which puts it before 1935 when it voted to rejoin Germany. To be a bit more precise, we can notice the Irish Free State, which ended the 3-year-long Irish War of Independence and means that the map must be drawn after December 1922 when it came into effect. On the map there's also Turkey with its modern day name and shape, which goes back to the signing of the Treaty of Lausanne in July 1923. Notice that Istanbul is still called Constantinople, which was changed on maps around the world in 1930 when Turkey officially requested that other countries start using the Turkish names, so it should be before that. The map also has no Vatican, which of course could be because it's too small, but the map seems to pay attention in other places to details like that, so I guess it's because it's from before the Vatican became independent in February 1929. Looking a bit more around Italy, we see that the Free State of Fiume is depicted on the map, which narrowed it quite a bit down since it only existed from November 1920 till February 1924 when it was absorbed by its neighbors. That all means that the map must have been drawn between July 1923 and February 1924, right? Well, the map is drawn by George Washington Bacon, who died in 1922 according to his Wikipedia. So, maybe somebody updated it after Mr. Bacon's death? Well, the case isn't completely settled yet. Notice that St. Petersburg, or Petrograd as it was known for a couple of years, is called Leningrad, which wasn't renamed until Lenin's death in January 1924. Though Lenin was ill during his last years, I doubt the mapmakers anticipated the name change after his death, so we can safely narrow it down to after January 1924. Looking at Morocco, we see the Tangier International Zone, which was created in May 1924 to solve a disagreement among France, Spain and the United Kingdom over its control. But we really began to run into problems when we noticed that Oslo has changed its name from Christiania, which officially happened in January 1925. I guess the mapmakers could have anticipated this change, but we do run into other inconsistencies when we look for other name changes. Elisabethgrad and Yekaterinburg in Russia were both renamed in 1924, but still have their former names. So these places with these names never coexisted at the same time, and this map should not exist. Though, to be fair, these are all pretty minor details. It just seems to be a problem with tracking and updated information when the map was made, which I guess was rather hard back then. So the map was probably made after January 1925 without being completely updated. Well, I looked up the map online and found a few posts on Reddit where other people had found even more things, such as Tsaritsyn still not being named Stalingrad, which happened in 1925. Reddit user Piscuri82 notes that copyrights were entered for the map title in January 1921, August 1923 and June 1929. And after I checked through all the catalog of copyright entries, he is indeed right about the copyright years. He conjectures that all the scans available online are now from the 1929 version, and that the creation of the Vatican was just missed by accident. Overall, I still think it's an awesome map though. Back to the one on my wall. It's also a pretty cool map. I often hear New Zealanders complain about being left out on maps, but this one even has 2 New Zealands, so I think we're good there. Anyway, clearly it's a Soviet Union free map with a united Germany and Czechoslovakia split, so we can safely put it after January 1993. On the other hand, Algeria is not Africa's largest country yet, as South Sudan still hasn't broken away from Sudan, so we are before July 2011. Which honestly is not surprising since I had the map before that. Montenegro is still not independent as we still have Yugoslavia on the map, which gives us June 2006. Capitals are marked by squares, so we can see that Myanmar's capital is still Yangon, which changed in November 2005.
East Timor is drawn as part of Indonesia, which it controlled until October 1999. There were a few border changes, such as when China and Vietnam signed a treaty resolving a border dispute, which just can't be seen on this scale, since it covers the entire world after all. So that's not really useful. Though, looking at Macau, it says Portugal until 1999, which would mean that the map is from before the handover. We can get that the map is also from before December 1997, from the capital of Kazakhstan still being Almaty. Quite a few countries changed their names, such as Fiji, going from the Sovereign Democratic Republic of Fiji to the Republic of the Fiji Islands. But the map just displays the shorthand name of most places anyway, so these changes doesn't really affect anything for us. Though Samoa is actually listed as Western Samoa, which narrows it down to being from before the 4th of July 1997. Most overseas territories under the governance of another country have these countries listed in parentheses, though Palau just says Palau, so I think it's safe to assume that it's after 1994. When it became completely independent. We also get a bit of information from noting that the capital of Tanzania was moved to Dodoma in 1996. The flag of Tuvalu was changed back from its former version on the 11th of April 97, and finally Zaire was renamed to the Democratic Republic of the Congo on the 17th of May 97. Here on this map it says Congo, though still not Democratic Republic yet. The very last thing I noticed on the map is that it's after the handover of Hong Kong from the UK to China on the 1st of July in 1997. That means that there are just 3 days where the world looked exactly like this, but that the map should indeed exist. An easier way to figure this out would probably be to just note it says 1997 on the map, but that'd be way less fun, and also not give us the possible dates. Please also let me know if you find any other clues. I've been staring at this map for so long, but I'm certain there's a lot of things I didn't notice. Though it doesn't seem to help us in figuring out when the map was from, it is interesting to note that since then the following countries have all changed their flags. Afghanistan, Bahrain, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Comoros, Dr. Congo, Georgia, Iraq, Yugoslavia, which became Serbia and Montenegro, Lesotho, the completely green one which used to belong to Libya, Malawi, Mauritania, Myanmar, Rwanda, and finally Venezuela, which apparently just decided they needed an extra star on it. Finally, my girlfriend's father has this big old atlas which was handed down to him for his family. It doesn't say anything about when it was printed, and he wasn't really sure about how old it was, but he guessed it was at least 100 years old, which he's certainly right about. When looking at Europe, we do see an Austrian-Hungarian Empire at this time, so we're before the First World War. Looking at Africa, which is probably an even more crazy map to look at, we see almost all is under European control. So much is colonized that it's just color-coded according to European empires. So the map is from after 1885, when the infamous Berlin Conference happened, where most of the remaining parts of Africa was just carved up. South America is probably the place where the borders have changed the least. It actually mostly just looks like it does today, though we see that Acre is still part of Bolivia. It had a few attempts at declaring independence before it was annexed. Today it's part of Brazil and Peru. So it seems we're before the turn of the century. On this map, Cuba is listed as Spanish, so it's from before 1898, when Spain ceded territories such as Cuba and the Philippines to the US. Though both places had already declared their independence, that was not too big a concern for the US or Spain. Hawaii is listed as a kingdom, but it became a republic in 1894. Macau is also a Portuguese colony on this map. Back when part of the European foreign strategy was going abroad, getting people addicted to opium in China, getting rich selling it, and then fighting wars with the local government when they tried to stop it, the Qing dynasty of China and Portugal signed an agreement in 1887, which formally put Macau under Portuguese administration. But I don't think we can use this year to pinpoint anything, since the Portuguese had been there hundreds of years before, so it would most likely have been drawn to Portuguese anyway. In 1890, the UK and Germany signed the Heligoland-Zanzibar Treaty, a very simple agreement where they agreed that the UK would give the island of Heligoland to Germany if Germany pledged not to interfere in the UK's dealing with Zanzibar. The UK should also give Germany the Caprivi Strip in modern-day Namibia, and the UK got Vitoland in modern-day Kenya, while Germany got a free hand to control and acquire more of the East African coast. And the UK got parts of East Africa, vital for the British to build a railway to Lake Victoria. While they were at it, they also agreed on a lot of borders in West Africa, though not the neutral Dagomba territory. That wasn't until 1899, and is still not divided on this map. Anyway, long story short, all these agreements means that the atlas is from at least 1890. Well, though the atlas doesn't say anything about when it was printed, it has a lot of other helpful information in the beginning, such as a list of all the flags, where quite a bit seems to have happened since then. Nobody told the Germans about the principle of keeping it simple. It also contains some sort of statistics on population around the world, religion, and stuff like that. But much more useful is a chart of how fast you can travel from the UK to pretty much any place. For example, going to Mexico from Liverpool will just take you 14 days, while Shanghai from London can set you back up to 46 days. It also has a list of all the world's commodities, both where they're found and how much is traded. There's all kind of stuff, such as olives, onions, opium, and even oranges. The atlas, by the way, describes opium as used in medicine and smoked and eaten by Orientals. So there's an explanation of how a solar eclipse works, a list of all the planets. This is of course from before Pluto was discovered. It's fun to note that there were still unexplored areas on the map when it was printed. Probable limit of the continent, and probably all covered with ice sheet. It also has a chronological list of explorers throughout time, such as the Romans, Leif Erikson, Marco Polo, Columbus, and this guy who just traveled to China. The perspective of what's discovered and isn't is pretty Western. Anyway, it says Andrea attempted to cross over the North Pole in a hot air balloon in 1897. And later it even has a reference to a map of the British Empire in 1898, so it must be after 1898. All these maps never coexisted, and this atlas should not exist. I ended up tracking a lot of cities that changed their names and other details like that. And it seems pretty random which things in the 5 years between 1893 and 1898 that are included and which aren't. But when the atlas was made, information flowed even slower than the world was changing. So it shouldn't be too big of a surprise that there are some small mistakes. The atlas is anyway a pretty fascinating view into just how different the world was 130 years ago. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel.
If you like these guys with flags on them, you can support me and the channel by grabbing a t-shirt at spaghettiroad.com.
This was a bit different compared to the last videos. So let me know what you thought about it. And if you'd like more in this style or more of the usual stuff. If you want to reach out, my Instagram is spaghettiroadofficial. Thank you very much, all the best, take care.